Deloitte has over 457,000 employees, and they operate in over 150 countries. And in 2023, they had revenue of almost $65 billion. And getting hired there, well, it's incredibly competitive. But it's about to be a lot less competitive for you, because in today's video, I'm going to give you actual questions that they're going to ask you in your interview, and I'm going to teach you from a recruiter's perspective exactly what to say to answer them in a way that'll help you stand out. Now, this is video 1 of a 4-part series, so make sure you watch this video all the way to the very end, and at the very end of the video, I will tee up the next one so you can seamlessly move through. And my commitment to you is if you watch all 4 of these videos, you will put yourself at a complete advantage when it comes to nailing the interview and getting a job with Deloitte. With that being said, let's get started. Now, the first question is, explain your experience developing and maintaining relationships with key decision makers at organizations. This is a really great question because the person who's going to take this job with Deloitte, they're going to have to be someone who is strong when it comes to building relationships, maintaining relationships, leveraging relationships. So in answering this question, what you have to do is you have to demonstrate enthusiasm and an understanding of how important it is to build and leverage these relationships. So what you should do is you should talk about a previous example in which you were working and you build relationships and you were able to use those relationships to accomplish goals. Now, I can't give you the answer for this because this has to be something that comes from your experience. But what I want you to do is think about this. I want you to write down your answer and practice delivering it, and talk about the importance of building these relationships, how you've been able to do it, your strategy for building and maintaining these relationships, and ultimately, what was the benefit of having relationships like this, and how did it help you achieve your end goal in this circumstance? And if you can do that, you'll do great. The next question is, how have you leveraged data analytics tools to bring forth great results for your clients? They're basically wondering here, what have you done to use data to achieve results? It's a pretty straightforward question. And the reality is, if you've worked in this field, if you experience with consulting, you have probably used data to decide, okay, what's the course of action? And you've probably been able to achieve many positive outcomes. So answering this question is actually pretty easy as long as you know it's coming ahead of time. If you have to answer this on the spot and you don't have a good example right away, it can be challenging to talk them through this, but knowing it's coming, what I want you to do is pick out an example that is particularly meaningful. Pick out an example in which you were able to use data to really paint a compelling picture to convince your clients to take a specific course of action, and then it just needs to end well, right? Whatever it was you did, it should end really well, and they should end up being satisfied with the course of action you recommended. By the way, if you want to become like the best candidate possible and you truly want to guarantee you nail this interview and all interviews moving forward, what I want you to do is I want you to go down to the description box, that top link with the fire emojis, that is my full interview prep guide. And it's a complete guide that should set you up for success for any interview you ever do. It has different videos that teach you interview techniques. It has templates you can use to interact with hiring managers, and has a whole bunch of different teaching discussions that allow you to elevate your candidacy for this interview and the interviews in the future. And if you use the code STARBUCKS, you get 50% off for a limited time. Okay, the next question is, how do you stay current with industry trends, emerging technologies, and best practices to provide innovative solutions for your clients? This is a really great question, and it's actually a pretty common question, or at least some version of it in a lot of different interview processes. It's essentially saying, hey, what do you do to make sure you are staying current with the market? It is so easy to get left behind if you're not constantly sharpening your sword. And the key to answering this question is it can't be an example from work, right? It can't be something that at your current employer, they're doing to keep you up to speed. What hiring managers, recruiters, and HR people are looking for when they ask you this specific question is, what are you doing on your own to stay current? Now, this could be a whole host of things. It could be education that you're pursuing outside of work. It could be industry newsletters that you keep current with. It could be, finding online resources or networking groups specifically focused on these things. It just has to be things that you personally sought out and things that weren't provided to you from your organization. And this is an answer where if you are doing these things, it is very easy to answer it, especially if you know it's coming. You can think about how to articulate it beforehand. But if you're not doing these things, it's going to be really hard to do this, and you're not really going to be able to make things up because they might ask further questions and then it'll sort of fall apart. The next question is, Please explain your approach to managing a team through various stages of a project lifecycle. They just want to understand here, how do you lead people through project management, right? What kind of project manager are you? What are your strategies? What are your techniques? And generally speaking, this should be something that's easy for you to answer if you're applying with Deloitte, because it's a big part of your job. But what's really important here is they need to, when they're listening to you answer this, hear enthusiasm and strategy, right? They need to walk away feeling, okay, this person, they like doing this type of thing. This is a thing that gets them going in the morning. They have motivation around doing this type of work. They also need to understand that you have a very clear and concise plan. So what I would do is I would just walk them through how you go about doing it. What is your plan? What is your execution? And then on the back end of that, have a great example of a time where you took over a team or you led a team through a project. Now, it's also really important that you don't take too long answering this question. There's a lot in here, and you could unpack quite a bit, and that could take you 4 to 5 minutes to answer this question, but that is too long. Ideally, when you're answering this question, you want this to be anywhere between like 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. It is a lot that you need to articulate, but you want to make sure that you don't ramble. So make sure you're concise. This is a question that is worth practicing. The next question is, can you explain your experience implementing cloud-based solutions or other cutting-edge technologies? Now, a few things are really important here. If you have cloud-based solutions that you've implemented, this is really easy. Just walk them through that. Talk about the experience, talk about the client, talk about what you did, talk about the outcome, talk about what you learned, right? Very easy, very straightforward. If you're going to choose another technology, maybe you don't have cloud-based technology and you're going to reference something else, it is really important that it's cutting edge, okay? When they're asking this question, they truly want the bleeding edge of technology. If you give them an example of something you have worked and implemented that isn't cutting edge technology, the assumption they will make is that you don't have an example that qualifies. So don't use some antiquated technology or some technology that's been around for long enough that they don't consider it to be cutting edge. You have to do that. Again, and this is true with a lot of these answers, they should hear strategy and enthusiasm, right? Enthusiasm for doing these things because you love doing this type of work. It is motivating for you. It drives you. It gets you up in the morning. But strategy, because these are complex things. And if you don't have a great strategy, it is going to be really hard to convince them that you're a good candidate. The next question is, how would you handle a scenario where a client is resistant to change, even though your solution would improve their operation? This is a great question, right? And it's a question that is like, it falls under the category of hypothetical. Because hypothetically, this could happen. And for many of you, it probably has happened. You probably have experienced this. So a few things. If you have an experience where this has happened, it should be part 2 of your answer. Part 1 of your answer, whether you have an example or not, should be talking through this type of situation. Like, that's a really great question. And I think this is probably common because although people say they want help, actually making changes can be challenging. My strategy would be, and then you go into talking them through exactly what you would do. Maybe you want to leverage data. Maybe you want to tell the client past examples of times where you've been able to implement a similar technology and the type of benefit that the partner experienced. You want to be able to talk through your strategy for convincing them to do that, crafting a compelling argument that will help them see the light and be willing to go through the change, so ultimately you can help them achieve the outcome that they need for their business. So that's really how you want to approach it, right? You want to share with them what would be your strategy, how can you go through and talk the client through why it's worth doing, how do you handle their objections, and how do you convey your point in a compelling enough way to get them to be open to change that they are currently pretty resistant towards. The next question is, can you share an experience of a time where you identified a process improvement for your team or organization? And a few things here. This should be a relatively easy question, right? If you're someone who has a continuous improvement mindset, or you're a consultant and part of your job is identifying and implementing solutions to make a business more efficient, you should be spoiled for choice when it comes to different examples. However, it is really important that whatever example you identify, you are actually able to go through and make the change. And the change should have a significant benefit. This shouldn't be something where you identified an opportunity, but it wasn't a good time for your organization to make that change. That example has no teeth. It's not going to help you impress them. This is a great opportunity. When you get asked a question like this, it is an opportunity you should not squander. You should want to share an example in which you noticed something that other people didn't. You were able to convey a plan that was compelling. You led this project through from cradle to grave, and the outcome was significant. If it does not have all those components, it is not a great answer. And this is a great question. So anything less than a great answer is a squandering of opportunity. So make sure whatever example you are giving, you are able to really convey all those things and check all those boxes. Now, the next thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to answer behavioral interview questions. They are a significant part of Deloitte's interview process. And it's actually why I made this video here. This video here is I teach you about behavioral interview questions. I give you a technique to answer all of them, and I share with you some actual behavioral interview questions Deloitte asks. That way you are prepared to absolutely nail the interview. I'm done here. I'll see you over there.